You know, one of the fascinating things about it is that sometimes people forget what the actual goal is. What's the goal? Why do you do performance management?
Improve.
To improve, to have better performance over time. A lot of people end up getting focused backwards. Performance management is about telling people how they did. It's only a tiny part of it. Doesn't matter what you tell them about what they did unless you improve. And so we're going to talk about some techniques to really help drive toward that. How do you help people improve? And at the Matchbox Group, we specialize in what we call positive change. There's a lot of ways to do changes, but the positive change approaches that we're going to talk about today, Feedforward being one of them, when you use this, not only does the change results are they positive, but people feel good about the changes, which is a lot harder to do, which is part of why we've honed these skills. Another reason why we've honed these particular tools and skills is because there's been a huge amount of brain science in the last 15, 20 years about how our brain works, what biochemistry happens when we feel different things. And as we've discovered, when people are excited about where they're going, when they're feeling like they have a good sense of purpose about it, they want to go there, they perform at a much higher rate. Fear, often, or confusion, brings productivity down, right? That probably makes sense. It's probably commonsensical if you think about it. You can galvanize people out of fear to stop doing things, but not to perform really well. You can get people to run out of a building quickly from fear, but not necessarily, right? You try to scare a bunch of people, half the people do what? Exactly. So fear often backfires. We're going to talk about how do you create positive change, particularly for the folks that report to you. The good news is the same skills and attitudes and concepts we're going to talk about also work in your personal lives. We hear a lot of great stories about how leadership people have said, wow, I was a good leader before, I'm even better now. I really love what I'm doing. My employees are happier about it. And we also hear equal amount of stories of people saying, I'm a better parent. I realize now that there's some things I can do differently to make my child happier, more excited about what we're doing, and actually better behaved at the same time. So it's really interesting. You can kind of listen with half an ear or half part of your brain going, how can I apply this to being a parent or a spouse? Winston Churchill, Prime Minister during World War II of England, said this. Now we're going to talk about a particular tool now that helps out with these types of things. It's one of the great pieces in the positive change toolkit. So everybody's heard about feedback. Marshall Goldsmith popularized this process. Feedforward is a wonderful tool. Now, feedback, there's times where feedback is absolutely critical. But a vast majority of the time, I have found that when we use feedback, Feedforward is far more effective, far more of the positive change. And this gets at some things we talked about before. How do you be more positive? How do you deal with a negative issue in a more positive way? So feedback, let's use the coming in late, by the way. That's a big challenge I've heard a lot of managers talk about. So the feedback would be, you came in 5 minutes late, you broke the rule, this is what it did to morale, this is what it did to my respect for you, whatever it is, but that's the feedback. Rarely does someone say, wow, you were absolutely right. I am so sorry. My behavior is going to change today. Right? How often do they respond like that? A lot of times what happens is morale drops for the day. Even if they were completely wrong. Or, usually here's the answer, response. It wasn't my fault. Traffic, blah, blah, blah. Right? Excuses, defenses. One of the challenges about feedback is it often creates more confusion than clarity. Not necessarily because the feedback was bad, although it often is, but because of defensiveness and reactions. Feedforward is different. Feedforward is not about the past, it's about the future. And you can give feedforward in a very gentle way, you can give it in a very directed way at times as well. So let's say someone's being tardy on a consistent basis. So we can say, here's the key thing, to be a respected top employee here, you need to make sure that you're actually at your desk at this time. So moving forward, let's think about that. I did such and such, I'm not worried about what happened in the past. Here's how it works. It keeps persisting. You can actually even get as tough as, here's the way to keep your job. You're in here 5 minutes early every day, and that will show me that you've got the attitude and the aptitude to make it happen. Which, by the way, when's the best time to hear that feedforward? Feedback, we wait till they screw up. Feedforward, you can do it way before something bad happens. Folks, here's a way to show that you're really part of the team. You show up early. One of the things I learned early on from work experiences, that if I showed up consistently, at least 5 minutes early, my reputation was so much higher. Here's a way to have a higher professional respect. So you can do that really early with somebody. You pull them, they've had one, tardiness. I might wait a couple days so it's not right there, and then pull them in and say, here's some of the ways to be seen as a real team player and strong on the team. It's really to make sure that when that clock strikes 9 or whatever you're supposed to be in, you're actually working. People are like, wow, you're committed. So this is all feed forward. This is about ways of talking about how to make themselves more successful instead of, naughty, naughty, you were late. One of the key things, but there's a problem, is if you wait too long, it just gets worse and harder and harder. The earlier you can deal with it, the better. Now, I would say, in terms of tardiness, there's a certain percentage of people who respond very quickly to feed forward. And they might say, well, the challenge is getting my daughter off to daycare, blah, blah, blah. So then we can say, all right, well, let's brainstorm together how to make that either on time or where you can make it up. Or, something like that. Because the time is less important than feel like they're committing to the university what they need to, right? And they're accomplishing their task. So you can start to talk about them with it up front. But if it's just, you did this wrong, they're probably just going to defend, and then you just see them as complainers instead of, and they see you as a heavy instead of someone who's trying to help them be successful. That's the thing. I want to make sure that you're successful in this organization. Let's talk about some ways to help make sure you're on time. That people know that you're contributing well. So we're actually going to practice feed forward right now in a different kind of situation. Very light. Everyone's going to get to ask for something. And here's what we're going to do. Each person is going to think of one behavior that if you improved would make a significant difference in your life. It could be work or home. It could be things like timeliness. It could be something like patience. Or I tend to jump into action so fast I'm not really listening to ideas. Or I take so long to make a decision, I want to make sure that I can move a little bit faster. Now, whatever you pick, I want you to phrase it in the positive. So rather than something like, I don't want to procrastinate anymore, because it's very hard to stop a negative, but it's easier to say, I want to be more proactive. Now that we can give ideas on. It's hard to say how to stop being proactive. Excuse me. Thank you, procrastinating. Exactly. So pick a positive one and one you're comfortable with sharing in the group. Once you do that, I'll walk you through it, but we're going to have a chance where you ask people one-on-one for ideas. Very easy, low pressure. If you can't read what you just wrote, maybe penmanship can be your thing. You're going to try to get 2 ideas from each person. Here's the goal. You want to see who can get the most ideas in 8 minutes. Here's how you get ideas. When I say go, you're going to actually get up. You have to find someone from a different table. You're going to go up to that person. You're going to say, here's what I'm working on. Can you give me 2 ideas? She gives you 2 ideas. The only thing you're allowed to say is thank you. Because she just gave me a gift of ideas. Now, she's not saying, you should do this, you should do that. She's just saying, here's some ideas. If I say, yeah, I tried that. Didn't work. What just happened to the flow of ideas? Exactly. So you thank the person. It doesn't mean it has to be what you want. Even if you think it's a terrible idea, it doesn't matter. They're giving you ideas as a gift. Thank them for that. Then you give them 2 ideas in theirs, and then quickly move on. Get 2 ideas from somebody else. Get as many ideas as you possibly can. We'll see who has the most. And only thank you, unless you have no idea what they just said, in which case you can ask for clarification. Other than that, thank you. Ready? And go. What's a word that describes what it was like to get all that feed forward from people?
Interesting.
Good.
Enlightening.
Collaborative.
Helpful.
That's okay. You can say it too. All right. It can be helpful to both of you.
We're a team.
That's right.
Relieved.
What's that?
Relieved.
Relieved.
Eye-opening.
That's fine.
Feel good.
Feel good.
Motivating.
Motivating. How often have you heard words like motivating, collaborative, helpful, feel good, eye-opening about feedback? Not too often. Now, feedback has its place, again. But feed forward, I think about 90% of the time, is actually more effective. Now, if someone's late consistently, and I get a number of pieces of feed forward, they're still doing it, that's when I pull them aside and essentially say, here's what you did wrong, You need to fix it. And then I move back to Feedforward. Here's how you keep your job. So it has its place, for sure. But 90% of the time, we can actually deal with problems a lot more positively. Now, one of the key factors, too, is that people were asking. That's very helpful. So it's also very helpful when you're giving Feedforward to say, I've got some ideas on this. If they're your subordinate, you can say, let me know when you're ready to hear it. Or if it's a peer, let me know if you're interested. If it's your boss, let me know if you want, and I'll tell you about it. But I find if you let people have a little bit of time to figure it out, they're much more open to it. So when Juju comes home from work and she's had a tough day and she's talking about a problem, I'm a little bit of a troubleshooter when it comes to people, right? I'm like, oh, let me fix it. And as we know, folks, that's often not what they're looking for. And when I say they, I mean your partner, because both genders want to vent sometimes, just be heard. And so I'll say, is this one of those times where you're looking for feed forward or to be heard? And then she tells me. If she says heard, all right, I just shut up and listen. And if it's feed forward, I might wait till she's done, then say, all right, do you want some feed forward now or do you want it later? And she'll say, tell me now. Or I'll tell you if I want it, Bob. And I let it go. Because I found when you give advice when it's not wanted, it's not usually used anyway. Now, if it's someone who reports to me, I may say, I've got some feed forward for you. Is this a good time? Or if it's the only time we have to do it, here's what it is, and I just give it to them. We teach them presentation skills a lot for people. And when you use feedback on presentation skills, they often get worse. You said too many ums, you said too many ers, you paused, you did this kind of stuff. Then they go the next time, and what do they think about? Don't say ums, don't say ers. Instead of, first of all, what did you do that worked really well? That's the important piece. Bob Newhart said 4 or 5 ums or ers per sentence. And he was a millionaire comedian. He is a master in that way. So what do you do really well? And then here's some ideas for next time you present. That you can do something about. You can't change what you did. Where can I use feed forward? I'm going to give you a hint. Anywhere you're talking to somebody else or to yourself, you can use feed forward. Sometimes when I start beating myself up or something I did wrong, and then I say, all right, hold on a second, Bob. That's just bringing me down. What can I do next time? And I give myself feed forward for that. So I want you to think of at least 3 specific places that you can use feed forward in your life. They might be with at least 1 or 2 at work, for sure. Who you might think about. It could be your boss. Could be something from your personal life, a spouse, a child, or whatever. I'm going to quickly tell you about a piece of research that shows part of why feed forward is so helpful. They use what's called capture labs to study teams. And they find that high-performance teams have an average, and there's actually a range, but this is just a nice round number to remember, 10 times as much positive as negative conversation. So you can use feed forward to hit that right balance. So positive things are, here's our goals, here's what we're accomplishing, here's what you've already done to be successful, really like the way you just did that. Negative is, that strategy didn't work, we need to try a new one. You still have to say those from time to time. Teams that have 12-to-1, their performance drops because they don't adapt enough. But the average teams that they actually looked at were only twice as positive as they were negative. And high performance starts at around 6-to-1. So this is a big thing. And these tools, particularly the feed forward, is a great way to try to get that right balance in your organization and help bring up the performance across the board. Plus, it's so much easier to know what to do when people are telling you how to do it versus what you did wrong. So much easier. Not only because you now know what to do, but because you have to deal with all the emotional problems, all the defenses and the conflict that come up when you're told what happened and what went wrong. It's really fascinating what goes on in the brain.